Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today we have Dan Miall here, Dan Miall here from BirdDog. We're really excited. There's a lot of questions already stacking up. And so Dan's going to join us in the second hour and talk about BirdDog and what they've been doing, what they're doing now, and where they're going, answering your questions. So stay tuned for that. And of course, if you'd like to see the full schedule, you can go to officehours.global. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we have? Can't hear you, Mitch.
Sorry about that. Morgan Price from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada has our first question. Have any panelists with the MixPre used the star button as a mic mute button? I just realized this might be a good option.
I didn't know that the star button would be a mute button. Is the star button a programmable button? Is that the issue there? I have to admit that you've asked a question that's outside of my skill set. I'm assuming that the star button is some kind of wild card, but I don't know the answer. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you can program it to mute or solo channels. I don't think that I would use it in a Zoom fashion because it's such a small button. It's hard to keep track of. I like the Stream Deck for mute. I was thinking that the Wingman app might be able to access that star button as well, but it doesn't look like that star button is there. So every time that you push that button, you're having to reach and find it. It's not like I'm trying to do it by feel. It'd be a tough one to remember where it's at. So I don't know. It's an okay solution, but I don't think that I'd use it as my permanent.
Go ahead, Noah.
That was my question: is where on the device is that star button? I'm assuming it's a physical button, and I hadn't programmed that either. That's interesting.
It's right above the 1 on the 6. It's right above the 1 and the 2. It's that big star.
And that's just kind of a wild card. It can be programmed to do a lot of different things.
When I look at it in the home menu, it's just mute and solo. So when you look at it, it shows, since I have a 6, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you click on which ones you want to mute or solo. And so when you push the button, it either mutes or it solos.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I do like the idea that you have, that's what I have is kind of a hard mute, and it works pretty well. So I'll definitely take a look at that. All right, next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. How is the show card being generated? Is it SPX?
I think it's actually Keynote. So I think that they generate the show card at the beginning of the show with Keynote. So next question.
And the next question coming in from me. I am experimenting with different file playback on the Blackmagic Design Hyperdeck Shuttle. Apparently different frame rates for ProRes 422 HQ files will cause problems if used together. What is a good standard to use?
Yeah, so the way that the Hyperdeck works, and this has been the way that all the Hyperdecks work since the beginning of Hyperdecks, is that you have to, they all have to be the same frame. They have not just the same frame rate, same number of audio tracks, same number of everything, same compression, you can't change anything. Sometimes even just something in the metadata can cause them not to play back. So what I do for all of these is I have a conforming setting inside of compressor, and I just drag everything that's going to go into the Hyperdeck onto that conform, and it's just called 422 conform. And generally, it's a 422 HQ or 422 that I use for that. I have two different ones depending on if I'm doing HDR stuff, then I use the HQ, and if I'm doing everything else, I usually use 422. And then if the only other reason that you might change that is if you're doing key fill out of the smaller ones, then you might do there's a 444 version of that as well. You just drag everything on, no matter what it is. It's all going to spit out at a certain frame rate and a certain compression. They were all created at the same time with the same piece. Or if I get something new, I just throw it into there. But by having something very specific that you're conforming everything to, everything works. I don't trust reading it. I don't trust figuring it out. I just run it through the system, and then it comes out, and it works every time. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Would you tell us what you're using? I mean, I like the idea of ProRes 422 HQ, but what would be the frame rate you use, for example, or the audio settings?
Usually I'm just setting it to 48K 2-channel PCM, unless I'm doing 5.1 or 714 or something. So I have a couple of different settings because I have different outputs. So sometimes I'm doing a 714 or a 514. So those are a different setting. But for most stuff that's not surround in some way, it's just a stereo PCM 48K for the audio. And then typically in most shows that we do are 2997, but a large group of the shows that we're doing right now are 5994. So it just, so when I say I have a setting, I have groups of settings, but the bottom line is depending on the show, we push everything into it. But the most common thing, the reason we use 2997 for most shows is because we're streaming to YouTube or Facebook or something like that. And most of those platforms will put out 30p no matter what you do. So it doesn't matter. You can do 2398 or you can do, 25 or you can do whatever you want, but it's going to come out 30. We build the shows, we conform the shows around 30. For some of the work that I'm doing right now, it's at 5994. We rarely stream in 2398. You can, but it's kind of a clunky thing to do. So those are frame rates. And then again, if it's non-HDR, I'll tend to do 422 to save a little space, but otherwise I use HQ. And then if I'm using, if we need key fill, then we'll do 4444. Next question.
And it comes to us from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Following David Brady's companion question yesterday, is anyone building an autonomous companion trigger actions?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I've done this in the past, and they've been, as David said yesterday, they've been kind of hit or miss. I just got done at NAB talking with Joe DeMax at Central Control, and he's the one of the things we talked about in the video was the ability to do this through that app. So I'm going to give that a try and see what happens. But when you're talking about anything with macros, it's pretty much hit or miss if you've got a computer that you're relying to do everything on. Because sometimes it'll think that it wants to open up this file. Sometimes it thinks it wants to open up this file. I've never had a good experience with macros.
Good, Craig.
Yeah, I'd thrown this in a couple weeks ago as well, and I expecting I was going to be able to be on the panel that day, and I wasn't. It was after they made when they finally put the last betas out as the stable version of Companion, and in triggers you can actually do an action based on a response. So you don't actually have to have even Companion accessible, never mind a Stream Deck. For instance, if you've got a lectern mic and you cut on an ATEM to the camera on that, you can have, as soon as the Companion software sees that, have it automatically switch to that camera if you're automatically switch that mic when you switch that camera, have that happen on an X32 or other actions. And it's just a logic programming where you don't even need the interface for Companion to be open, which I thought was really exciting. The options that it brings forward for people that don't have the option of doing something like an Isadora or Universe. It's just built in and you can make it happen that way.
Next question.
And the next question is from Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK. His question is, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K can show battery level as a voltage. In this case, at what voltage level would you want to swap to a fresh battery?
Go ahead, Carl.
So according to the manual, 6.2 volts. So the battery can handle between 6.2 and 10 volts, and the DC input can handle between 10.8 and 20 volts. So 6.2 volts, if you see your battery go below that, that's time to change it out.
And if you're doing any serious work with your camera, really think about how you're going to get an external power supply for it. It's just we were just working with someone who had a Blackmagic, and they were constantly they were really good. It was obvious that they swapped the internal battery often, and I thought to myself, I would, rather than getting really good at that, I would get an external battery. So think about you can get a DTAP to external input, and the DTAP will really give you what you need to tag into that. And now you have all kinds of battery options. You have power options. You have V-mount or Anton Bauer or all these other things that you can find some place to put them in your pack, in your backpack or whatever. Run a little cable out to it or however you want to handle that, and really get something that's going to be longer lasting. Because an Anton Bauer battery, a typical one, will run that camera for like 6 hours. So then you don't have to worry about it. Next question.
And we're going to stay in the UK for our next question from Nick Batt. He asks, Filmic Pro Android, is it possible to record external USB drive? I can't get it to work, and if not auto archive, is that iOS only?
I didn't know that an Android could record to it. I mean, I don't know enough about Android. So I just didn't know that Android could record to an external drive, USB drive at all. Is that a thing? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I don't think so. What you can do is you can record to the phone and then transfer it via USB dock to like a card or a drive from there. But I don't think that I'll have to double check with my Android devices.
And I don't know. I actually, Nick, you've stumped us a little bit. It's a good deep question. But the auto archive on the iOS, I've never used either, so I don't know what auto archive is. Typically, we just hit record and then stop. But I don't know if it automatically is capturing things. I don't know if it has a spooling process or not. But yeah, I'm not sure. Next question.
I'm in for a question. Is it possible to fix a typo in your question after it's been posted to Mukana?
I imagine this was connected to the last question. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, again, Alex is the oracle of this, but as a fix or a workaround, I will often, if I do that mistyping, send it back to the notes, fix it again, and then resubmit it. Now, if you catch yourself early enough, people hopefully haven't voted on it. But yeah, if you do send it back out to your notes, then it will lose all your votes.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I thought there was an advantage to reading the questions and I could fix my typo that way or add a disclaimer.
There we go. I read the questions just to fix my own typos. Anyway, yeah, the reason we do this and the reason that Twitter does it is because you could change the meaning. So while, once you have a voting structure or anything else that's there, once you put it into the pool, and especially once someone's voted on it, it's all of our questions. It belongs to the community, not to you. And so the main thing is you can take it out and say you want to change it, but it's what would happen is, and this is what does happen when you have systems that allow you to vote but allow you to edit. People will put in one question, they'll get it voted up, and this is a known behavior, and then they'll change it. They'll put a not in. This is not that, and literally reverse the question with a word. And so then when it gets read out, it's completely the opposite of what everybody voted on. So that's why we don't do it. And I didn't understand it because I complained a lot to Twitter about it, and someone at Twitter explained to me why they did that, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why we don't do it. So, all right, next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California. What's a challenge in your work or life that you're currently working through?
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, as it was announced earlier, today is National Hoarders Day. So I do have a glut of scarves that I'm working. No, actually, thank you, Noah. I'm very blessed to have been given the opportunity of working with Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet, to tell his life's story as a documentary. And 5 years ago, in the before times, we started the interview process. And so we have a lot of great conversations with a very fascinating man that made a lot of fascinating choices in his fascinating life. Yes. So that's my current challenge, is getting the momentum back, and various people, people are helping that. And I'll probably asking more help along that process coming soon, because we'd like to get that film finished before the end of the year.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I got a couple challenges going on. Biggest one was my truck died on Sunday, and where the shop is saying it's over $1,000, I could probably save myself $800 by actually doing it at home. And I know exactly how to fix the problem that they fixed. So that then, of course, all that money was earmarked towards doing this NAMM CineGear thing, which I still have to do. I'm still going to be there for. So that's probably one of my biggest challenges right now. The other one is just getting some of the shows that I have in my head going, so I can start publishing them and putting them up so people can watch them.
Good guy.
Yeah, so we're going to exhibit at Infocom this year for the first time ever. We have a product that we've been working on for the last couple of years, and it dawned on me how many pallets we have to ship in. And listening to Lenny the other day, the internet connection, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is going to cost a ton more than I thought it was going to. So we got to figure out how to get some monitors up, and if we're going to do trussing, and it's all that classic Freeman stuff, and carpet and padding and all that. So it's some people have problems that, this is one that we just want to have a good show. So, some people have worse problems to think about, but it's just a challenge that we're going through right now, and trying to not rush stuff and get more signage printed and brochures and all that stuff to where you got to pay 100% rush fees. So it's just trying to be mindful, bringing product to market.
Yeah, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. After 10 years, I'm working very hard on listening to when people are asking or talking to me, as opposed to using that as a time to formulate the answer in my head before they've had a chance to finish. And because I've been on with Lois, and tomorrow I'm going to be on with Tony Mobley, conversations with Tony Mobley. Sky brought up a good point. He said, live in the moment and try not to be a personality. Try to be yourself and listen, and don't look like you're thinking about what you're going to say next. I think that's rude, and I'm trying not to be rude.
Good, Tom.
Well, mine's just simply a first world problem. I ordered a Mac Studio back in March. It was supposed to be here this week, and now they're saying July.
Yeah. For me, it's mostly clutter. I'm just trying to declutter. It's I have a garage full of things that need to be thrown away, sorted, processed, and it's just a hard thing to cut through. So I'm slowly working through that, but I think that's the biggest challenge I have at the moment, which is fortunate. Next question.
Noah Sargent again from Fullerton, California, asking again with different panelists, does anyone have experience with scissor cranes? Came TV, accordion crane, Proaim Powermatic Scissor Jib crane, etc.
Go ahead, Noah.
These look super exciting and interesting. I just keep looking on YouTube for more hands-on experience with them, and it doesn't seem like there's anything but like quick tutorial videos. And there's a few people who commented, Alex did too, about seeing them at NAB and whatnot in the past. So, but they're interesting.
We play with them all the time at NAB. You always at IBC specifically. There's like a big. I think it's a Proaim. I don't know if I saw it at NAB, but at IBC I see them, and I play with they have a Proaim has a gear head, and they have a less expensive gear head. It's like a $2,000 gear head or something like that. And then they have the scissor crane, and there's two things I play with going, I need one of these at the house. And I have not not purchased one yet. In our stage, one of the things that I've been hoping is that we could start using it as a kind of a test location, and seeing if people will send us stuff to test on the stage and move around a little bit. So we'll see if we can't reach out and see if they can't send something to us to test for a week or two, and then we can play with it. Noah, you can come up and you can play with it yourself, and then give us your opinion. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the folks that run these have been doing it for a while, so it's tough to get good at these. So it's one thing to own one, but it's another thing to operate it and store it and transport it and all of that. So I would look strongly at how many gigs you'll do a year, and if it's worth owning or if it's worth just getting an operator, because it comes as a package. Generally, you rent it, and then it comes with the operator. So I would take a look at just your schedule for the year, and if you really want to own one, because there are cool shots, but they're overwhelming. Or just get a smaller one that's not what you're talking about, that you can handle or anybody can handle, because just the weights alone, I mean, you're transporting a lot of weight. The further you go out, you got to counterbalance it. And then are you going to have motion control at the end? And those take some time to get used to.
And we had an Andy jib, which was kind of a Jimmy jib knockoff. And it worked really well, but we did have to tore apart all the electronics and put them all back together again. They were not quite as responsive as we wanted them to be. But once we did that, we used them all the time. I will say that a jib in general adds so much production value to what you're doing that it's, having I think in our case, it was a 36-foot jib was super useful. I mean, just not having to pay for it and be able to throw it in there. And again, you do need to be really good to do a lot of complex shots, but you can go a long way with just some nice moving shot. Just moving shots over the crowd adds a lot and doesn't take as much skill. Noah.
I've been directing some shows lately, and I've had the jib, right? And I've gotten comfortable with that and having great operators, and I'm definitely going to keep hiring those folks. At the same time, I realize that there are smaller productions that it could be an interesting thing to add that to the repertoire, where I don't necessarily need the pro at it, and I could play around myself or, have somebody play around. But yeah.
Where I think you really have to be a pro is when you go over 12 feet. So you'd be surprised at how much we had an easy jib, and we probably used that easy jib more than we used anything else all the time. And we used it not just for, like when we're doing lots of training, we would use the easy jib just to move the camera around. That way we don't have to move sticks and we don't have to figure out how we're going to mount it. So it's only technically a 6-foot jib, But you could get these little establishing shots, and you get these, a lot of the stuff that you would get with a big jib, but it was easier to install. It didn't get as much attention. And so those were things that were, we used the easy jib, but the big thing was when we were doing overheads and everything else, being able to just reposition the camera quickly was super valuable. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with what Alex just said, because I even use them for doing product shots, just because you can move the camera if you have to for getting a better shot. So
yeah, having a solid jib just for repositioning for trading shots is worth it. Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, if you're going to look at other options, I'm very interested in the Edelkrone. If it's a shorter jib, but it's also automated, so you've got your little robotics possibilities, and they've awesome thing they've done is really use the interface of your iPhone now. So it used to be you had to be a mad scientist, but now it's I want it here and I want to finish here, and it locks in that movement for you, and then you can do minor modifications with your iPhone or your iPad. So that if you're wanting to play with new toys, these are new technologies that are coming your way.
Next question.
Eric Antonio from Washington, D.C. I heard some of the pre-show audio interface discussion and was wondering, does the panel have any favorite vinyl preamps to pair with their audio interfaces? Or are there interfaces available with vinyl preamps? Most preamps appear to be from mics.
Good, Carl.
So there is one. I'll give you two from two different ends of the spectrum. So the Behringer one, which is a PP400, which will set you back about $100 Australian, probably $80 US. So that's got RCA out and a TRS out. But if you want to go the other end, if you've got a lot of vinyl collections, you want to do it, then the PS Audio. So the Stellophoto preamp would be my choice by far. It's going to set you back at probably about $3,500 US. Around the back is you'll have XLR outputs. So you've got your phono ins, you've got your ground and everything. But yeah, you've got XLR outputs for your and then you can put your XLR into whatever interface you want. And then you can transfer, so RME we were talking about as well. So RME can go up to 768 kilohertz. So you can put them into 768 kilohertz or DSD if you want. But this is kind of, if you want to do it properly, $3,500, $80 Behringer route.
Sorry, I got mine wrong. I was researching the answer. Go ahead, Craig.
So I've given Dennis a video, an image here, but I've not used this one. I've desperately wanted to have a need for this. This is the Extreme. This is a Millennium Media Loki. I've used their mic preamps. I own some of their mic preamps, and they're phenomenal electronics. But this is their just shy of $15,000 archival phono preamp that gives like everything you could possibly want to do to adjust and get the signal out.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, those are very high-end and great devices. But if you already have a preamp with a line in and you want to turn it into a phono preamp, you need a RIAA phono preamp input to put into your line. And those are not terribly expensive, but it's a specific curve that's specified by the Recording Institute of America that allows your phono preamp to reproduce a flat frequency response.
I have to admit, if I was doing it, and I'm not an expert in phono, I would still get an MK1200 with a USB pre too, and just RCA out, RCA in, and get a. I think it's a pretty flat response there. So anyway, it's not the cheapest solution, but my daughter was thinking about getting a record player, and I was like, MK1200, that's what you need. You need an MK1200. All right, next question.
And it's from Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK. How would the panel use or repurpose a 2009 MacBook Pro in order to put it to a better use than just recycling?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I just actually got a 2008 iMac that I've been trying to figure out that same thing. So Snow Leopard's the best that you can put onto that machine. I believe the 2009 is the same thing. I would not use it for surfing. I definitely would not use it for surfing. If you're going to be going onto any of your banks or anything like that, there are security risks that are involved in that. If you need something for surfing, then you might want to think about putting a different operating system onto it. However, for me, what I use it for is different types of music options, running YouTube, and of course, I can also put on things like GarageBand, and then just do some basic music editing with that software. So it works well for me. And then I'm also thinking about putting it in my set as just decoration.
Good, Carl.
So I would put probably a SanDisk SSD in there. So, and I would probably use it as a Plex server. So it's pretty good as a Plex server. So running older Macs, they work really well.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
All good suggestions. I'm recycling everything and putting Linux on it, like, and I'm not sure I pronounced this correctly, the Ubuntu flavor.
Ubuntu.
Great. Pardon me?
Ubuntu, yeah. Go ahead,
Thank
Craig.
you.
Yeah, I was going to say make it into a Linux machine. One of the things that I'd be interested in doing right now is to see if you could put Linux on it and run Companion on that rather than a Raspberry Pi, just to give you a little bit more horsepower. And with Raspberry Pis being so expensive right now with the chip shortage, it might be a good option.
This is running on a 2012 Mac Mini. So you can probably do something like that too. Something that's basic drawing app or something like that. Next question.
Noah Sargent is back from Fullerton, California. He asked, apparently Tom Brady is the name of both a famous American football star and a film director. Do you know other well-known individuals with the same name?
Go ahead, John.
Oh, what's going on with your brain today? This is an interesting question. So I looked it up and I found out there's several of really interesting and famous people. My favorite one is Albert Einstein, and Albert Einstein, a.k.a. Albert Brooks.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so Brian Cox, the actor from the UK, and Brian Cox, the scientist from the UK.
All right. Oh, how confusing. You should have one play the other. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So Michael Keaton's actually Michael Douglas, which I learned a long time ago. But my name is also the CEO of Occipital.
So there you go. Very good. All right, next question.
Andre Dole from Berlin. What is the most cost-effective solution to bring key fill graphics into an ATEM Extreme, not using the media pool?
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
With key fill, there's probably the Hyperdeck. Which one is it now that has a 2 out? I think it's the
Mini
$1,400 one.
Yeah, I think it's it's like $495 or $595. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best way of doing it that I know of.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I do that too, and the problem is that there's a flaw on the Hyperdeck that when you convert it from SDI to HDMI and you bring them both in, the alpha doesn't quite match up. It's like it's a timing error that's going on there, so it's not 100% foolproof.
Well, if you're using the Mini that has 2 SDI outs, or because it just should be just 2 SDI outs. It will never match up with HDMI. So you need the 2 SDIs out. And then you're converting both of them to HDMI. Is that what you're doing there?
Correct.
Yeah, that conversion won't work. You need to go SDI out. The Mitti, MITTI, will have, if you have something that's capable, a card that is capable of putting it out, we'll do key fill as well. Next question.
And it's coming to us from Rusco Jones in Brea, California. Shoulder mount, 2 hands out, front cage, a DJI stabilizer, or nothing? What is the best to mount an iPhone 11 for interview work? Thinking rig for NAMM or CineGear, but bonus points for a mic solution.
And by the way, QLab will also do key fill out. I just want to add that to it. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, this is going to be a great question of discussion. I think if we're sticking with an iPhone rig, we should have some sort of gimbal. I think that would be kind of the minimum for me. And then we have seen a lot of products with 1 receiver, 2 transmit. Or wait, is that right? Yeah. 1 receiver, 2 transmitters, so we could have 2 wireless microphones for folks. We're also talking about a larger kit with my FS5s because I'm on site for both of these events. But I will say that we have on our agenda for these events, we have the 26th. It's really going to probably be the 27th where we'll have a full meeting on this to discuss what those details look like. So if you want to be involved, please reach out to me.
Good, Carl.
So I've been putting a lot of thought into these kind of kits that we can use for these conventions and conferences and those kind of things. For an iPhone, a small cage would be good, but a monopod, not even a big one of the smaller ones. So Manfrotto and Godox, they make these smaller monopods that kind of look like selfie sticks on steroids. If it's a one-man operation, if it's a 2-person operation with the iPhone, where you actually have someone interviewing and someone on camera, the reason why the monopod is because you want to get rid of the Z movement. So phones and any cameras can't handle the Z movement. They can handle X, Y, and they can handle that with their stabilization. They just can't handle up, down. You'll get tired after a few hours, so you'll actually end up going up, down more than you'll do anything else. So monopod, just hold it there, and you can put other stuff on the monopod too. So you can clamp your receivers for your microphones on the monopod, all that kind of stuff. If you're doing iPhone, once you get bigger, I still think a large monopod is good for these conventions because you can move really fast, but it does require a camera person. So the person who's holding the monopod shouldn't be the person interviewing. So it does require at least a 2-man team.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the cage is very important in any phone, whether it be iOS or Android. During our NAB action, everything was on the tripod except for the Scarhoid, where I actually held on to the phone as we were moving around, as Andy was talking to, and I can't remember his name, but that turned out pretty decent. Other than that, what I've been using for my conference coverage has been the Pocket 2. That doesn't stream, but it records, and it does it at 4K. It does a decent job. And I can get some stabilization and some gimbal action as I can keep that onto the tripod or monopod as I'm going up and down between product and person.
Yeah, I will say that a gimbal is hard to manage on the site. It's just hard to move because everything you plug into it becomes a thing. Like everything with a gimbal is just, you have to rebalance everything if you're using a larger gimbal, or it just doesn't work when you use a smaller gimbal when you plug anything in. I really like the small rig cage that Tom suggested, and I've got a couple of these, and it comes with a little handle. You can get a couple of these handles. I also have larger cages that go around this. I think small rig could be a really good source for a bunch of what we do. And then you could put a little light on it. I'll tell you that if we're using iPhone 13s, the low light compensation is pretty good. I don't know how much you need for that. As far as what I'm working on trying to get for us is probably what I think we ought to think about is what the interface should be for the phone. Whether that's going to be a Saramonic or something else that's mounted to the phone. But as far as wireless goes, I think that we should lean towards a electrosonic mic plug with a receiver, and I'm working on acquiring those for what we're doing, either rental or other. And so, but I think that my success audio is pretty important, and I found that not messing around with the wireless transmission has helped me a lot. I had years of footage with bad audio until I just moved to electrosonics, and then they just all worked. And it's a rare part of it is that it's not something that almost anybody else uses at a conference. Almost everybody, in my experience, and people can correct me, but almost everybody uses the Sennheisers, and almost nobody changes their frequencies. So they're just stepping on each other constantly. Whereas you get electrosonic and you move the frequency around to something a little bit more odd. And better yet, we'll make sure that you guys have a frequency analyzer. I have one here I can send to you that you just look at it on it. You actually need an Android phone for it, but you look at it and you can see the graph of where all the wireless is, and then you can just set your electrosonic in between it, and you'll be fine. So, but I think for audio, I think that's what we need. Again, the big plus is, do we want big soft audio, big soft light? One of the things that we've gone around with, we've had those little air stars. They're like 2.5 foot bubbles, and you just put it up there and you walk around with it. It does get a lot of attention, but they look amazing. Everybody looks amazing all the time. It's a handheld air star, which we could take a look at too. Next question.
Alex 4D Golner in London, UK. Some say After Effects is unreliable because it still contains very old code. Should Adobe rewrite it bit by bit or start from scratch by re-implementing all its features in modern code?
And go ahead, Mitchell.
It's no secret I'm a big fan of After Effects. I've been using it since it was COSA, so that's like 20-some years. And I think it's a little bit of a misconception to say something that is old is unreliable. It might be large. It might be a huge code base because it has a lot of old code in it. But as to the unreliable potential, I don't agree. I think it's very reliable. It's rock solid. It has a lot of input from a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. And if they should change it, and they have, by the way, a few times, because it's been around since PowerMax, remember? And I think that it can be very viable regardless of what Adobe decides to do. But remember, there's lots and lots of software engineers that are working on that all the time, right now even.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I don't know about lots and lots, but there are people that are working on it still. But again, I think it's the user base that is the real challenge to a question like this, because I've worked with many different nonlinear editing softwares, and there have been much better versions of how to cut a show, but it was the user base that was locked into the old way of doing it because that's how they made a living. So I think the challenge for any corporation is not the modification of the software. That's actually the easy part. It's getting the human and the wetware into the hands and into the zeitgeist of the people that are using it. They don't want to change oftentimes. At least that's been my experience with nonlinear editing. And again, as an ancillary product to video production, After Effects really supports that. And are there other softwares that Adobe could come along and do? Well, they've got the buckets of money that they're throwing at new concepts, but they're also trying to find out, where do people want to go and how can we sell them and be a part of that process?
Yeah, I think that one of the problems that Adobe does definitely have some technical debt issues. So we call it technical debt, which is that you do have a ton of old code in there, and it makes it very hard for them to update to things like new operating systems and take full advantage of those operating systems. So you see a lag in Adobe's ability to take full advantage of the M1, take full advantage of a lot of those things because of that technical debt. So I think that is a problem. I think that what Apple might have been done better at with Final Cut was to release a new Final Cut, continue with the Final Cut they had, and allow that one to just grow up until people started jumping ship, and having two different apps. And I think that Adobe would do well for writing what starts out as a basic compositing application that may be free, that everyone does, that has a lot of the basic stuff that you'd have in After Effects, but written on entirely new code, written on entirely a new thought process of how they want to do it. Maybe they keep the stuff they want to keep in After Effects, they put new stuff in, but it's all modern architecture, and then slowly build that up until there's some point where people want to jump off of After Effects into the new After Effects or the new whatever it is. So that, but allow that to be a 5-year, 8-year curve, or a 10-year curve, not a, we're going to try to rewrite it, because rewriting it, that's trying to fix a train while it's going 80 miles an hour. Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. Alex, you said on MacBreak Weekly, number 799, that these Uber conventions are probably going to be gone in 5 to 10 years, unquote. Do you think NAB IBC will be part of those that die out?
Yeah. In 10 years, yeah, they won't be around. They'll be around. So when I say that they're not going to be around, they're not going to be around in the size that we saw them in. We're just seeing this over and over and over again with people we're talking to in events that we're working on, is that people aren't showing up. They're just not showing up. they're signing up if it's free. So a free event is turning out to be really difficult because people will sign up and then they just don't show up. And a lot of that has to do with, it's been COVID, but now the flights and the hotels are astronomical. Like they're in an entirely different world now. And so if COVID wasn't bad enough, now it is so expensive. Who cares about how much you charge for the event? We just flew somebody to New York today, and the hotels are $500 to $600 a night. I mean, these are not good hotels. These are like basically Motel 8 are in the $500, $300, $500 range. The flights are in the $2,000 range round trip. It's insane numbers. And at the same time, what you have is, people like Liminal inside of Zoom and all these other things picking up, and the Obvio, with Grant and Blue and all these things picking up speed. So that it's not one or the other. It's the convergence of the technology getting way better really fast, and the expense of doing it and all the other things that, happen. And there's a lot of other uncertainties that potentially will happen in the next year that will make it even more complicated. And so everything's just rough. And so the problem is it's kind of like the canopy is opened. There was a canopy, how it works when you're in the Amazon, a tree falls down, and then all this stuff rushes up because there's suddenly sunlight underneath the canopy. And the longer that canopy stays open, the more will grow out of it. the canopy is wide open, and it's stayed open for a long time. And that's what's going to, I think, going to unwind this, because over time, the online event is going to be the big game. I mean, Grant's already talking about, they're looking at shows that are 500,000 people. I think that within 3 years, we're going to be doing million events with 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people. And at that point, it just doesn't make sense to build a physical event. Now, could it exist as a smaller, more exclusive event where people like us cover it and get the word gets out? Because, that could be a really interesting thing where the vendors are only dealing with the people that are the decision makers, and it's a much smaller footprint, and it's more intimate, and you spend more money per person, and you do all those other things. I think that could be a future, but a future of 100,000 or 200,000 people is not going to survive 10 years, in my opinion. Next question.
Steve Bodner from Colorado Springs, Colorado, looking for recommendations for VPN options. Primary use case is connecting two ATEM minis on different subnets and possibly looking at NDI feeds from those same networks.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I've been exploring a little of this myself, and if you truly need a VPN because you're in two different locations, or there's a variety of reasons for security and whatnot, there's software VPNs and then there's hardware. The ones I've been playing with more recently are from Data Video, the BB1, and it's a piece of hardware that allows you to create a secure tunnel essentially across. So I think we're talking about two different things as well. The NDI is not going to flow through. You typically wouldn't use a VPN in that way with NDI. You would use NDI Bridge, or you would convert it to SRT using something like BirdDog Cloud. Their cloud service will do exactly that. So in chat, if you could let us know if you're actually traversing the public internet with your NDI, because that is where you want to use Bridge, and that's only available on a PC. And you can actually set those settings to control how much data is flowing. So you can go all the way up to 4K and ultra high quality, or you could dumb it down to low quality. So it just depends on what you're going to be doing with that and what it looks like at the other side.
And those BB1s, they really are just VPN. There's no limitations, right? You could just put them on either end.
Limitations. They make it so you can only have 5 devices on each side. So you could have one ATEM, let's say Constellation at one side, and then 5 controllers at the other side. So you could have 5 people opening up the audio tab, the graphics tab. You could have an ATEM controller on the other side. So it just depends on what you want to do, but that is the limitation. And I'm not sure why they impose those limitations. Jonas and I were talking about it. It seems like it is like he found the piece of hardware. It's off-the-shelf hardware that they use, and it just might be the power
handshake
of that device
that makes them different, right? It's the fact that they can manage it, and you don't have to figure out what the IPs are.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce. That's what you're paying for. In fact, I hooked one up just to a cellular, one of those little Netgear M1. I have it on AT&T, so it has Ethernet out. And from the passenger seat of my car, I was driving down the road controlling a camera. So it's pretty nuts that you can control a camera from afar over cellular once you have one of those BB1 set up, because it doesn't care. Once you ship that BB1 to somebody, they plug it in and it knows to phone home. Yeah, it knows where to go.
And can you have is it more than a point-to-point? Can it be like 6 of them all in the same VPN?
I believe so, because the way that we have it right now is we have 5 in my demo account. So we have 10. So we have 5 afar and 5 locally. And so 25 devices can be talking to 25 devices.
Right. So they don't have to, it doesn't have to be one-to-one. Like this big yet, it's connected to that one.
Yeah, it's all accessible. Once it's on the network, it's on the network. Any devices will appear that's on the net. It's a VPN. It's wide open.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
I have 2 follow-up questions for guys. So my understanding is basically you have a portal or multiple portals from one network to whoever's trying to access it, essentially. Is that correct? Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, with the BB1, that's the case. Yeah, it's portal and portal. But the weird thing is that with these devices, there's 2 Ethernet ports. So one is the device that's receiving the internet, and then the other one is the devices that you're controlling. So it's physically breaking those off from your regular network. So you're actually, so for instance, I have a PTZ controller at one side, and at the other side I have the camera. So it's just a one-to-one relationship in that regard, but portal to portal. And
then you have to buy each box, right? And then do you know what the price point is on the boxes?
They're about $220, I think, a piece, but they come as a pair because you want one on each side. Yeah. So, and then there is a cloud account that you got to pay for the month. It's like $30 or something.
That's really cool. Next question.
Roscoe Jones from Bray, California. Would a Rode Go2 be a good solution as an iPhone mic for two people, host and guest?
Go ahead, Carl.
So again, I've put a lot of thought into this with the kind of stuff we're going to be doing like at NAMM and stuff. So mine is always going to be the Godox. So this is the megahertz range, not the Wi-Fi range, not the 2.4. So it's 96 channels. So Godox in North America may be known by a different name, maybe known as Ceremonic. So North Americans may know Godox by that name. Godox is a Chinese name. They're now selling as Godox in America now. So they kind of have two brands. But yeah, so the Ceremonics use the exact same frequency range. There is something also very cool about this particular range. I'll bring it up. And this is what I was thinking more for the conventions, is it uses this. So this is so it's in the megahertz range, 96 channels. It has two banks as well. So if you've got two teams, you can put one in bank A, one in bank B. They won't step on each other either. But yeah, so you can plug an SM58 into this, or you can plug a Sennheiser MD 46, which is another very good microphone for noisy environments to cancel. So these would generally be my kind of things for these kind of interviews, if you're going to do that kind of stuff. They just work. They're in the megahertz range. You won't step on other frequencies. Except for Ceremonics, so not too many people are going to be using Ceremonics, I guess. They're going to be using the Sennheisers or the Sonys, which are usually in the 6 and the 4s. So they're in the 600 megahertz and the 400 megahertz. That's usually their range. These ones they don't cover every frequency in that range, because there are some frequencies that are allowed to cover. So there are some blank spots, so you don't get actually interference with, I know some security cameras that work in the megahertz range as well.
Go ahead, Danny.
Well, if you're going to use the Rode Go2, just remember with the iPhones, you do need to buy from Rode their lightning accessory cable, because many have tried using cheaper third party, it just will not work. But when they purchase the actual Rode lightning accessory cable, it will work. You will get the dual channel.
That's great. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, exactly what Carl said. You're going to be 2.4 gigahertz wireless is going to be stepping all over each other. I saw it at NAB. And of course, when I use my my Pocket 2, that is a 2.4 gigahertz wireless. If I got 6 feet away from the camera, you could start to hear the stutter in the audio. I did UHF during the live stream, and that one had a 10-channel selection for both lavs, and it worked really well on that for connection. But I would stay away from anything 2.4 on there. If you're doing it in studio, it works perfect. There's no problems.
Yeah, at my house, it works great. If I'm in an isolated area, I think a Rode Go, it makes a ton of sense. But once you go into a more trafficked area, I think we need to up it a little bit. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany would like to know, would you invest in a good tripod even if you only plan to use it for your camera at the desk?
Carl?
Yes, definitely. So there is one tripod from Manfrotto that is like perfectly suited for this. So it's a B3 Live. It actually has a fluid head. This is actually the tripod my camera is sitting on right now. So this is the tripod I use for like office hours. My other tripods they'd be perfectly fine, but they weigh probably 5, 10, 15
And this
kilos
is kind
each.
of like the updated version of the 190, right? Or the 193 or whatever.
No. This is completely new kind of.
Okay.
So the actual legs themselves are part of the B3 range. They're actually probably 80% the weight of the 190, but they have the strength of the 190. You're correct about that.
Yep.
But the head is brand new.
Right.
So this is the smallest, I believe, the smallest fluid head there is. So it's fluid head in tilt and fluid head in pan. Manfrotto spent a lot of time making this head. And I remember when they released it, they gave it out to a lot of influencers because they wanted to show influencers, hey, you can now have fluid head at this range. Now, it only works for fluid head for probably DSLR and smaller. So Pocket Cinema Camera and the lighter. Once you go above that, the fluid motion, once you go to like an Ursa or something, you need a little bit bigger head. But for anything that's DSLR or smaller, it's a perfect fluid head.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I was going to say, wow, Carl, that's a great solution. And I was going to say you're losing a lot of floor space. And so I was going to recommend, if all you're doing is putting it in front of you or mounting it to show down onto your desk or something like that, I've used a C-stand if that's all you're going to do. But I sure like your solution, Carl, because it gives you the automatic flexibility. But to your point, what is the camera that you're going to put it? How heavy is the camera you're going to be putting on that? Because it's the fluid head or the head that you're also going to be having to manage. So that's the challenge in the question. And then how much floor space?
One thing I've got to mention, this has also got a ball head. So there's actually a ball head in here as well. So
Right.
it's
That's
a bull
great.
head. It's a miniature bull head.
Yeah.
It's about 1 inch bull head, fluid pan fluid.
And how much does it weigh? See, that's the other thing.
It's
It weighs
light.
it weighs next to nothing. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
brilliant.
Yeah, while you're checking into those things, check out the new small rig tripod. They just announced it. It's got a fluid head on it. It's a bargain, and it's really well made, like all the small rig stuff is.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And you could do what I do, and that's actually put this camera onto a slider, so you can move it back and forth when you
There you
absolutely
go.
need to.
Yeah, and I use the one that I have my camera on is a triad orbit, and it's the advantage of that is that it has a low open, and it's just got a single pole that comes up, and it's a great over. I've got a couple of these, and they're not cheap and they're not light, but they are super solid to throw things on. So there's another thing to take a look at. Next question.
Next question from the Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, guys. When do you use a software playback program, Mitti, Playout B, etc., versus a hardware playback option, i.e. Hyperdeck?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it really depends on where those files are coming from. If you have the time and it's your show and you can transcode everything in ProRes, if it is a hyperdeck to that format, then I like the hyperdecks because I like to say go green deck, go red deck, and you just have them all and you can visually see them. And if you need to swap them and make them recorders, you can just grab another SSD or SD card and pop it in. On software, I like it if somebody's going to be throwing something last minute at me that I need to transcode, or if they give me an H.264 file and I need to just play it out immediately, that's when it's nice to have Mitti. And I like, it depends on the mixer as well. So if we're using vMix, I like to use Mitti because it has the auto roll function over NDI. So when I cut to that play out, it automatically begins playing. I don't have to do a two-step approach to hit play. And that's what Playout B does as well. If you're connected, it'll auto roll if you enable auto roll. So that's something to really consider is what the formats are coming in as, and do you need to auto roll, or can you two-step it and push play at the same time?
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's all true from Guy. Thank you. And the choices are getting bigger and bigger. One of the cool things about the Playout B is that he's able to just do a software upgrade and change the capabilities. I just bought a Hyperdeck Shuttle, and the thing that I like about it is the purpose-built shuttle wheel on it, which is so handy, so easy to use, and I don't think a mouse-based system is as good as that nice weighted shuttle wheel that sits on top of it.
Yeah, we usually use them both together. So usually the main things that we know that we've been able to conform that we got ahead of time, we all do out of Hyperdecks. And then the things that come in at the last minute, we have usually either QLab or Softron. We use Softron or the Playout B that we use to play out. And those are to react to things like, oh, we just got this in. Oh, we have this in here. We have to throw it in here. We don't have time to conform it or figure it out. We also use Softron a lot because it does Dante and it will put out, we'll have tracks that we've had up to 37 channels going out because it's multiple languages and surround and stuff like that. And Softron's the only app that can do that with 10-bit output for HDR. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. If you were trying to pull house sound to a local mixer for streaming work, would XLR to 1/8 inch cable on each end be sufficient? Or am I oversimplifying it in my head?
Go ahead, Carl.
So if you're going out of the front of house mixer as XLR and you want to go 1/8, that's not going to work because you're going balanced audio. It's completely different. So what you want to do is if you've got a 1/8 inch jack, it's looking for like a -10 dB. That's kind of like a consumer level. Most mixers will have a tape out. So it's usually a RCA, red and white. They usually have that as an output, and it's the exact copy of the main outs. You can take that. Now it's not balanced, but it will suit your equipment if you've got a 1/8 inch in jack, and you can just buy those cables an RCA to a stereo 1/8 inch jack or TRS. That's the best way to do it. You need to get that mixer close to the front of house mixer. You don't want to run long cables, but that'll be in the correct format and unbalanced because it sounds like that's what your equipment can handle for your streaming application. That would be the way. There's another way of doing it. You can run XLR out, but you need to go into something like the Art Box we've talked about, which goes XLR in and it can do unbalanced out. So and that does actually have a 1/8 inch jack in it. So you just need a 1/8 inch TRS to TRS for that. But the ART box that allows you to, the clean box allows you to do that as well, which is about $100.
And when Carl says don't run long on an unbalanced, no more than 1.5 feet, and with nothing around it. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I would think it would come down to your interface, right? How you're getting the audio ultimately into the computer that's streaming. When I hear 1/8 inch, I'm kind of got a bad taste in my mouth because the ATEM Mini Pro has that 1/8 inch in, and again, I've said this 100 times, but it's not my favorite interface for that. So if you can do like a Scarlett or one of the ones Carl just mentioned to get that to an XLR input, that's always great. I would highly recommend looking at a Dante setup so you go to digital and don't have to hit any analog.
Yeah, go ahead, Kenneth.
Nobody likes 1/8 inch stuff. That's just 1.5 feet long. Yeah, exactly. Well, depends on how close you are from the house mixer to where you need your board to be. In one particular case, my own, I'm about 100 feet away from the house mixer, which is behind the and over and in a closet and over there where nobody touches it anymore. So we came out with a balance line, ran that balance line, make point of that balance line, ran it over to where the inject point is, and then went through, having no budget, a DI box, a passive DI box backwards, so that we brought the balance line in and came out unbalanced through that 1.5 foot short cord that nobody likes. And what we used was a Pyle PDC-21. That's a $25 completely passive. It's a transformer in a box, and that's really all you're doing is converting balanced line to unbalanced line, and then a little magic with the connecting cable, and you're done. It don't do 1/8 inch unbalanced line for any length at all. You're just going to regret it.
I build all my architecture around not using unbalanced audio ever. Like it's just in the most like. If I'm pushed into a corner, I'll have some boxes that will allow us to go to unbalanced, but unbalanced is the devil. Like it is just for production. You end up with buzz and hiss and all kinds of other things, and you can't get out of it. And, when you listen to, it's just, there's so many problems with it. It's fine for consumer components, which is what it was designed for. It is not okay for production, in my opinion. In my opinion, you should never use it ever, and so even with balanced, if I'm going more than, a couple feet. I want it to be balanced, and I'm careful about it. But if I go like more than 50 feet, I want to turn it into Dante or Ultranet or something that's going to get me away from any kind of analog signal at all, to move it from one place to the other. And I have to say that when I got religious about that, a lot of my audio problems went away. And it does cost a little bit more, but not a lot. Like an Ultranet solution with a Behringer X32 with one of those S16s or S8s, it's not a super expensive solution, and man, does it clean things up real quick. Next question.
Ike Potter, Hanover, Germany. Can Carl explain again how to set up the Flow8 stage, recording, bus, routing, etc. to bring in a microphone via PC in a Zoom session? I watched the Flow8 Special, but did not get it. Sorry.
Go ahead, Carl.
All right, so this is essentially what I'm doing right now. So I've got a microphone coming in via the Flow8 into Zoom, and I'm hearing you guys via the Flow8 as well. So you're coming back to me. So this is me right now. So you can see me on channel 1, and you can see my main out is also going up and down. If you guys speak, you'll come up on the blue channel, which is the USB return channel for this. So the routing that we're going to be looking at. So this is the updated. So make sure you have your updated app software, and make sure I don't believe the Flow8 has changed this software since I did my talk. So I've got my phones up here. So in the routing on the top left, you see 2 yellow dots. So I've got my phones listening to main out and pre. So it's pre-fader, and I've got my monitor mix going out as pre, but the most important one is going to be down the bottom here. So USB, the Bluetooth USB playback. So I've got phones only. The reason why is the USB is you guys coming back from Zoom into my ears. So I only hear them in the phones, and they can't be mixed into, so you're not going to hear yourself. On the far right side, I've got nothing highlighted because I don't need anything highlighted because I'm not bringing any other channels coming back from the PC, and I'm not putting any effects. I'm in streaming mode at the top, so you'll notice at the top it's streaming mode. That's kind of important, but I think Zoom can actually see the first 2 channels now if you just put in 10 channels. But in streaming mode, it only sends 2 channels. It won't send any more than that. So that's pretty much it. So this routing here, just pause the video right now if you're watching this in the future. And you'll just need to set up your routing to this orientation. And then as far as the actual channel outputs, I've got my mic plugged into channel 1, and I've got Bluetooth, which is a return. Now that Bluetooth is just how much I hear. and then I've got the main out, which is going out back out to Zoom. That's what you guys are hearing. I've got in my monitor stage, I've got nothing, and in my effects stage, I don't have nothing. So it's just the main stage that I've actually just the main outputs that I've got stuff. So channel 1 is my microphone going in. So that's the channel that I'll change. So when Mitch says, "Can you come up 3 dB or go down 3 dB?" That's when I'll change there. Then I've got my main out, and then the Bluetooth is return from Zoom, and then the routing again, just quickly. The bottom one down here. So Bluetooth USB play, set to phones only. That will never go to main mixer. Therefore, the panel's voices will never come back through my Flow8 back to them again. So they'll never hear the echo.
Great example. Thank you, Carl. So good to have you here on Tuesdays. All right. We are changing subjects to our second hour, and we have Dan Miall here from BirdDog. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Alex. Great to see you. And hey, everybody. Thanks very much for having me on.
We have a lot of, we're going to get an overview of the questions are already stacking up. Your BirdDog is very well known within our group. So we're really excited to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you get started? What did you do before, and how did you create BirdDog?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It seems in some ways like a lifetime ago, but really it's only a bit over 5 short years ago that we started up with BirdDog. From my perspective, basically before BirdDog came about, I was actually working with a company. It was actually a previous company I started with my co-founder, Eamon, who some of you may have met as well. It's called Blonde Robot, and they were actually a distributor for new tech. So we were lucky enough to hear about NDI before it even came out. And so for us, as soon as we saw what the capabilities were with NDI, we kind of got thinking that, it's kind of a good trick to go from one computer to another with a video over IP. But we really need to get that as close to the camera as possible. And that's really what sort of started out the idea with BirdDog, is we need to make a hardware device that we can mount to a camera. And the concept for our first product was really to make that camera back. So it was a device that could do video encoding. It had tally on there. It had audio intercom, as well as a whole bunch of cross converting and things. And that was really the catalyst. And from there, we've had a whole bunch of things that we've worked on, and obviously learned quite a few things along the way as far as how making hardware and how inventing new workflows can come about.
And what's the hardest part of making the hardware?
The hardware itself, I think. It's look, I think I've said it a few times, is how hard can it be? And look, along the way, effectively what we've done is had to build our hardware, which is the physical circuit boards, and making sure that works. Look, we deal with high frequency signals, a lot of bandwidth with video. One of the funny things is audio is a whole lot more tricky than we thought. So when we're actually building up these products, as you go through the first stages of development of any piece of hardware, you kind of have these milestones that you want to reach. And being completely frank, the video side of things, that creating the NDI video, we had to produce our own IP to encode uncompressed video into this. That was really our first milestone. And then we thought, look, we're over the hardest bit. We're into the audio side of things. But look, amongst friends, that was actually just as challenging to get right. So
what makes the audio so hard?
Look, I think it's to do with the way the timing works and everything with it. With video, in computing senses, you actually have a whole lot of time. It doesn't sound like much, but 16 milliseconds is a long time. There's a lot of audio packets that have to happen in that time as well. So getting them right, getting them in order, making sure they're the right levels and things. There's a lot of traps along the way to make sure that actually happens right. And then encapsulating that on the network and then keeping it in sync. So that was probably a good example of where things aren't necessarily as quick as you might think when you're developing products. But it all goes towards learning that and making sure it improves the product moving forward.
Now, you've moved from the basic interfaces to the cameras themselves. Where did that impetus come from?
So it actually was, we were talking about, Eamon and I were talking about this quite a few years ago, where we need to be as close to the glass as possible. And originally that was, when we talk about glass, it's either as close to the lens of the camera as possible, or actually as close to the screen at the other end as possible. And so with that in mind, we're making sort of inroads from the encoders going into decoders. But it actually at the same time made a whole lot of sense to actually put our technology directly into the camera. The idea with that being that we actually have full control of the camera. So not only are we just taking an output from that, but we can actually adjust it and use all of that power of NDI to have a whole bunch of control over it. But then we can also reduce that latency even further, because I think one of the things that has come up along the way, certainly with video over IP, is really managing that latency. So the combination of our processing abilities, what we've built, in fact, how we process that video into NDI is really unique at BirdDog. And then putting that directly into the camera kind of makes this package that's really tightly integrated. So that was kind of the thinking behind it. And then we've really rolled out a whole range of cameras along the way. So we've got everything from quite a small compact camera that works really well for tight spaces in small studios or even conference rooms. And then they go right up to Sony 1-inch sensors that are great for broadcast work.
That's great. Now, where are you going from here? You've got the interfaces, you've got the cameras. What's on your horizon?
Probably a couple of different things. We actually, NAB was only on a couple of weeks back, so we had a whole bunch of announcements there. I think probably it's split into 4 different groups as far as the company is concerned. We've got our converter products. We're still making a whole bunch of inroads with that, and I'll talk a bit about the formats that we're looking at supporting. It ties really tightly into the other categories as well. So on top of converters, we've got our cameras, and I've spoken a bit about that. We've got some great announcements that we had at NAB there. And then AV is actually a place where there's actually quite a lot going on in that merging between broadcast, live streaming, and AV. And the last bit, which is probably where I'd say things are going, is all that software component, which includes not only in-venue building out workflows and things, but also that cloud piece. And cloud's kind of this term that's thrown around a whole bunch of different ways. And unfortunately, we're a little bit guilty of calling our product BirdDog Cloud. But I think really where things are going is not only being able to send video from one place to another for remote production or REMI, but also being able to move devices and access them directly within cloud environments. So you can scale up and scale down as you need to for production requirements. So I think that's probably one of the real key future parts.
Can you tell us a little bit about the cloud, the BirdDog Cloud?
Yeah, sure. So there's actually a whole bunch of modules that go into BirdDog Cloud, and it's almost growing on a weekly basis. There's more and more things coming out with it. At its purest sort of format, essentially it was a method to send NDI video from one location to another. We could take anything from your local network. If you install a cloud gateway, you could then encapsulate that and send it over the public internet to another location. You fast forward a couple of years and we've got things like NDI Bridge that are out now as well, which do a similar job to that. The difference really with cloud is we've got this orchestration engine which sits in the cloud. And that means that you can access multiple locations and control those links directly from any location around the world. You don't need to have software in the foreground at any location and things like that. We've also added a whole bunch of extra features. So at the moment, it's kind of tricky. If anyone's used SRT before, you have to open up firewall ports and have port forwarding and things like that. That's all well and good when you've got a small studio, but when you're working in a corporate environment or if you've got a studio where security is an issue, that can become kind of a problem. Creating holes in firewalls is not necessarily IT department's favorite thing. Right. So with cloud, we've actually built what we call a DX service, which is our distribution service. And in a lot of ways, it works a bit like WebRTC, or what we're using here with Zoom, is it becomes a reflector service, which means both your source and your destination, what's called northbound traffic, which means that you don't have to have any firewall ports open. You don't have to do any configuration. That means you can scale up in larger organizations. Probably one of the coolest things we've built from a technological point of view. But probably more on a visual side of things, we're really excited about Cloud Connect. And at NAB, we actually won an award for one of the features of this. Cloud Connect is a series of applications that you can install on any device. So whether it's an iPhone, whether it's an Apple TV, a Samsung TV, an Android device, whatever it is, we've built effectively an application that can be installed from the App Store on any of those devices. And it allows you to access any of the NDI sources anywhere in the world on anything. And effectively what that does is you can not only browse your sources, you can then control them as well. One of the beauties of NDI is you have that PTZ control if you're using a PTZ camera. You've got tally borders, you've got a bunch of other metadata that can go through. And we built that into these remote applications. So you can control, reframe that camera.
From your iPhone?
From your iPhone, yeah. Or from your TV remote control.
Right. That's very good.
Pretty neat.
That's very good.
It's kind of fun. And then the extension of that is we've also built that into adding far end control. So I know earlier in the show you were talking a little bit about post-production, and in the pre-show I saw some boxes with some old Final Cut Pro things, and my background is actually in post-production. And so we've actually built an Adobe plugin which runs on Premiere. And it will actually not only send your output from your confidence monitors, but also your timeline. And if you've got a camera in your edit suite, it'll send all of those. And at the far end, whether that's on your TV or your iPad or your Android phone, you can switch between those views.
Wow.
So if you're a producer, you can be looking at the final output while it's being cut. But then if something doesn't make sense, you can then switch that over and have a look at the timeline. And that's all done through BirdDog Cloud. So all of those sources that are available can then be triaged and mixed together.
That's amazing. What were the biggest releases for NAB for you?
Lots. It was our biggest NAB in every single way. So the amount of space that we had, it was quite a large booth, certainly for us. Of course, there's the giants out there, but I think it was twice the size of our last NAB booth, and it was filled with new products. So we had a whole bunch of hardware products. Probably one of the most exciting things for me is 2 firmware releases. And this, we're hopefully starting to paint a bit of a picture about who we are as a company. These firmware updates apply to all products that we've ever sold. So we've got tens of thousands of these devices out there, and these firmware updates, which the first one is called the NDI 5 release. So anyone that's followed NDI, there's the latest version is NDI 5.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of things that are in there which are really useful in terms of the network underlying control and things like that. There's also some great new features, which is a genlock feature within NDI. Now, It's not quite what it seems, but basically what you can do is choose one of your NDI sources to be your master, and then all the other devices will then send out their timing at the same time. But we've taken that opportunity to refresh the entire interface of the cameras, so and our converters as well. So once you install this new version, it basically gives you a brand new BirdDog product. It's got all of these new NDI 5 features. We've also added in some great convenience things like on our cameras, we've got waveforms and vector scopes. So that's built in now. It can you can turn them on and off. And one of the cool
in that case, the camera is generating. It's not generating a video feed, but generating the telemetry to turn it into the waveform and graphics.
Absolutely.
Downstream.
So we do that directly within our FPGA. So we're processing all of those waveforms and vector scopes. And we think that's important actually, because we're looking at the camera head. So before we're going through any compression, before we're going over the network, you can actually see what's coming out of that camera head. And then you can adjust that to make sure it's working correctly. The cool thing with it, we love it. The cool thing with that is you can turn it on and off depending on whether you want it on your program stream, or you can keep your program clean and then you have a preview stream that's got your waveforms. So if you're doing a live show over the course of the afternoon, the lighting changes on your preview stream, you can have permanently up your waveform that you can see exactly what's going on, and then you can adjust that on the fly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Anything else before we jump into the questions? They're stacking up.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. Actually, there's a couple of other cool things.
Yeah,
we added in within that firmware. We also have 3D support within our cameras. So again, any camera you bought from BirdDog gets this 3D support. So that gives you the opportunity to do things like XR or AR using the Unreal Engine, where you can add 3D graphics into real life, or you can actually take.
And is that a matter of sending the telemetry data of where the camera's pointed and positioned in real time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so in real time, and that's probably the key with this, is we get not only the telemetry data from the camera, so it's the pan, tilt, zoom, and focus, iris information, that all gets sent at the same time as the frame of video. And then within that 3D engine, you can then interpret that and either have, go into a 3D world with your video asset with a green screen, or you can have 3D elements be overlaid with augmented reality or XR as well. So that's pretty neat to be able to do. And I think actually for some of the lower budget shows and things where people are doing virtual sets, this opens up the door to have a whole new generation of those virtual sets. Or if you're doing corporate presentations and things, to have graphs and things fly out of the floor, you can do some pretty fun stuff.
Absolutely.
The one last thing which I will talk about, there's a mountain, but I know we're kind of limited on time, is our Silicon 2 release. And this, again, is something that's pretty exciting because it's for every product that we sold in terms of cameras, all of our 4K converters, and it unlocks a whole bunch more formats that we can support. So BirdDog's known for NDI. We've got our own IP that's the fastest way of processing NDI in the highest quality, and it's built into all our products. With Silicon 2, we're now extending that to be able to do NDI HX2, NDI HX3. So that's the 2 different flavors of higher efficiency NDI. We also have built-in SRT connectivity. And also, I mentioned that Cloud Connect application where you can have a mobile phone that can control a camera. We've actually built the source side of that directly into all of our products as well. So you can access any of our cameras, any of our converters on your mobile device anywhere in the world, and you can reframe them and you can reorganize those while still sending out full NDI within your local production. So it's kind of a game changer to take all of that great stuff that we can do in high quality, and then also make that available remotely as well.
That's awesome. Very good. I'm really glad to have you here. Let's go ahead and start jumping into the questions. We've got a bunch of them stacking up here.
First question from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany. How does BirdDog Cloud connect compared to NDI Bridge?
Sure thing. So thanks for the question, Jonas. I think the best way to describe it is the amount of features we have. So BirdDog Cloud really is a whole processing engine. We can do the same thing as Bridge. We can send NDI video from one location to another, and we can have multiple streams in sync. We can also then publish that out to an RTMP stream. We can produce multi-views. We can have various controls within Cloud Connect, so you can publish that to a mobile device as well. You can view it in a web browser. Probably the most convenient feature, though, is the fact that it's orchestrated through a web portal. So that means that you don't need to have computers running foreground applications at both ends. So if you're an organization that wants a permanent link between different locations, or if you're sending out a device to somebody, you don't want to have to tell them to open up an application and configure network ports and things like that. So BirdDog Cloud really goes about making that entirely managed from a web portal, and then be able to send video and audio to all different locations. Probably one last thing you can do is also work with native SRT as well. So if you've got a broadcaster, for example, that wants to take a split from what you're doing, you can just send that out as native SRT at the same time as going to another location at NDI.
That's great. Next question.
Andy Korkendorfer from Viera, Florida. Is BirdDog planning on a direct Zoom interface like Zoom ISO, but in a hardware codec?
So I think I'm going to interpret this right, Andy. We actually did announce, and I've got a whole list of products that we announced at NAB, and one of them is called BirdDog Pod. And what Pod is it takes your NDI on your network and turns that into a web camera. It's a physical device that's power over Ethernet, so you plug it in. The other side of it is USB, and that appears as a web camera. On the top of it, you got 4 shortcuts, so you can choose 4 predetermined sources, but you can also control it via APIs and all sorts of things. But it means that effectively you don't need to install any software on that computer, and you can access any NDI device on the network. I think that's really cool for any organization that's got to bring your own device type policy. You can just jump into a meeting room and plug it in, and within Zoom, you can see any of your NDI sources.
And when you say any of the NDI sources, does that tie in also to the cloud so that any of those NDI sources would be available to that pod?
Correct, yeah. So that'll work with any NDI source at all. And effectively that just goes straight in. And that is full NDI as well as NDI HX support as well.
That's amazing. Next question.
Jonas Dattel from Stuttgart, Germany. Any updates on the Birdogplay device?
Thanks, Jonas. I liked your first question better. Birdogplay is a product that we announced a few months ago, and we're really excited about it. It's a tiny little device, not dissimilar to a set-top box, but it's designed to be an NDI as well as HX and cloud decoder box. It's a great price point. The issue we've had is really around supply chain, and it's really caught us up. It's one of these products that it seems to be every time we're nearly there, there's one last little hiccup. And because it's an entirely new architecture, we can't sort of use our existing kind of backlog of supply chain and computer components and all the rest and chips. So that was a long answer to say it's really soon. It's actually almost finished production. The firmware is looking good. So we're expecting certainly within the next, where are we? We're in the middle of May now. I'd say within June, we're very clearly going to be shipping that around the world. So.
Next question.
And it's coming to you from Alex Olegnewitz in Toronto, Canada. Any thoughts on the lack of production grade on premium NDI switchers?
Yeah, so I think the question there is about on-prem. So basically, if you have an in-venue NDI switcher, there's a whole bunch of different options. You can roll your own in terms of compute power with things like vMix. You've got a whole bunch of features and functions. And if built properly, they can live up to a lot of production requirements. The trick is that you need to know what you're doing with building those. If you just throw it onto any old hardware, you're not necessarily going to get that result. And that's where things like NewTek create their TriCaster, where it is a fully locked off box. They have exactly the same components that have been tested and tried along the way. And with those, you will get a higher level of support and a higher level of predictability within those products. Probably an interesting occurrence that's happened over the last couple of months is with Grass Valley. So Grass is known at the top end of town in terms of broadcast switches. With their AMP or AMPP platform, they now actually support NDI within there as well natively. So I think you're seeing more and more organizations at both the lower end, at the higher end of production, embracing NDI. So for your question, I'd say a lot of people are using TriCasters, and Viz have got a higher end version of TriCasters. But then as we get things like Grass Valley and those kind of companies involved as well, that should hopefully answer your question there.
Yeah, next question.
Steve Bodner from Colorado Springs, Colorado, relatively new to PTZ, have used the presets to store specific shots. Can the presets also be used to store movements, i.e. slow pan left to right?
It's a different method of storing a preset. So generally, I shouldn't say generally, some cameras will have a thing called a trace memory where you can record a path and then you can replay that back. So that's one way of doing it. You can't typically do that with just a standard preset where you have one location and another. What we are working on as a company, actually at BirdDog, we've released we announced at NAB and we're showing it. It's called Camera Director. And that's where we can have multiple stops along the way within a preset. So you can pre-program moves of a camera, in fact, multiple cameras, and move them all in sync at the same time. So if you've got anything, whether it's a sporting game or an awards ceremony, you can have 3 or 4 cameras all moving in unison over a predetermined path and replay that multiple times. So we think that's a great opportunity, and this hopefully along the lines of what you're talking about in terms of being able to do predetermined movements with that. But we're extending that to be able to do that with multiple cameras as well.
When we use motion control arms, we can design the curves of how they're going to get from one place to the other and then replay them. And then, but you have like a graphic interface. I want it to do this kind of ease in, ease out, or I want it to speed up. I'm just saying that would be really great.
That would be very cool. Yes, we should talk about that afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Jonas Dottel is back from Stuttgart, Germany. Will Central Pro be able to work as a router for non-BirdDog receivers as well?
Good question. So we've actually just, again, there's so many new things. And so I love these questions because they're all going into our new products as well. So we have a new version of Central, which is our Enterprise, or it's Central Pro, and then there's a higher end version called Central Enterprise. The only issue we have with working with third-party devices as far as pushing different sources to them is every device really has its own API control. So within our central platform, we can control, obviously, a BirdDog device to choose different sources for it. The way I'd work around that if you had a third-party device or a software receiver is we can also, within BirdDog Central, set up unlimited amounts of routers as well. So within those router outputs, we can switch those. So once you've got your receiver programmed in to be hooked up to that router, we can then just switch that.
Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California. He wants to know, is there a way to sequence or queue up camera moves so several moves get executed back to back? This would be great for music performances with a minimal crew.
Yep, so that's our Camera Director application, does exactly that. And while it's in flight, you can adjust the speed of it as well. So you can ride that speed up and down depending on how fast you want things to happen. So that's exactly what it will do.
Next question.
John Foltz from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. What workflow do you recommend for NDI inputs and outputs on SDI switchers such as Blackmagic?
So there's a couple of things that we can do here, depending on the size of your switcher. If you're talking SDI, what I would recommend is one of our products. In fact, there's, again, another cool announcement is along the lines of giving free updates for existing customers. With our SDI converter boxes, the 4K SDI converters, we've actually enabled that now to be a dual channel device. So that'll allow you to do 2 channels of decode, completely independent NDI sources over SDI. And then you can put that into 2 separate sources within your Blackmagic switcher. We've got a whole bunch of things that we're working on with our quad device as well. There is a quad version of our 4K decoder box or 4K transcoder box. So I think in the near future, we'll see some additional things happening with that as well.
Next question.
Alex Oganello, Alex, from Toronto. When would we expect third-party PTZ controllers to be more stable, i.e. Scarhoy?
So I think I'm going to. This is very new information, and it's coming out soon. So I'm probably going to get a rap on the wrist for talking about it here. We're actually unlocking a whole bunch of extra stuff within that control protocol. So probably something that's not necessarily all that well known. When you get right down into the deep PTZ control, standards are typically used like VSCO and VSCO over IP. That's a Sony format that's been around for a whole bunch of years. Our cameras fully support VSCO, as do almost every other camera. What we've actually done is looked at how that protocol works. And right now, there's only 24 levels of speed adjustment you can do within a VSCO protocol. We're actually going to turn that into 256 levels of speed. So that's going to give you a whole lot more fidelity around how those cameras move, which means those finer adjustments and movements are going to be in there. In terms of reliability, I think that's just down to how they interact in terms of those protocols, whether they're calling on APIs or whether they're trying to communicate over VSCO. But I think companies like Scarhoy are to be pretty commended. They support a huge amount of devices and they make some great hardware. So I think as we introduce these things, they'll jump on that and you'll see a whole bunch of extra cool functions and movements coming out.
Next question.
Mickey from the Philippines. Why is Dante NDI Bridge limited to 8x8 channels and why Windows only? When is 64x64 or 128x128 and Mac OS coming? Or a hardware device would also be preferred by many.
Alrighty, so there's I'll break that down a little bit. So I might just describe, but we've got a product called NDI Bridge or Dante Bridge, and it does exactly that. It'll take Dante in and make it NDI, or NDI in and make it Dante. So it's a translator application. Up until a couple of months ago, bizarrely, it was 6x6, which is a bit confusing to most people. So it's just been recently turned into 8x8. And you can choose to either have that as 4 stereo pairs or 8 channels mixed together, however you'd like. In terms of going for larger amounts of channels, it does depend on really what you license from Audinate. So Audinate being the parent company of Dante, it's about when you're licensing a piece of software specifically, you can choose how many channels you want to have within there. So technically, there's no reason it can't be larger. To be honest, we haven't had that many questions in terms of going to that amount of channel counts, although I think there is more and more things happening with NDI and audio, and so it'll be interesting to see what that demand looks like moving forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. In terms of hardware, this again is something that we've been working on. It's not quite ready yet, and it's been coming for quite some time, and to the frustration of a few people, and me included, is Dante enablement in our hardware. Much like we were the first people to do NDI in hardware, we're going to be the first people that have in-field enablement of Dante on our hardware as well. So you can choose to enable Dante on any of our BirdDog devices, whether that's converters or cameras. Now, it's not going to be 128x128. It'll be 2x2 and 4x4, depending on the devices. But it does mean that that actual camera can then be the point where you're joining up. If you've got house audio coming in, you can then join that up in the camera and make an NDI feed out of that, which we think is a pretty neat workflow.
Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California wants to know, has BirdDog considered building cameras with larger sensors starting with an M4/3, APS-C, full frame, etc.? You'd be industry leaders with this, and many of us are interested.
It's a great idea. And of course, we want to have the cameras to be as high quality as possible. There's probably a few hurdles along the way to that, and I probably can't talk too much about that. But in terms of the way we build a camera, we use Sony image modules exclusively, so the Sony sensors and Sony image modules. So in some ways, we are limited in scope with that in terms of the sensors we can use. Then from there, I think what goes hand in hand with those larger sensors is things like HDR, 10-bit, higher color subsampling or chroma subsampling and things. So NDI is moving along, but we need to make sure not only are we making these products that will do these, but we're also keeping in step with the whole ecosystem. We're all about making sure that our products actually do fit within a larger ecosystem. So if we were to go too far down that path and start to build in a lot of these extra features, we kind of need to make sure that we're in line with how that works in the overall NDI ecosystem as well.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's optics issues too when you have larger sensors and the projection of light onto that larger sensor. But even at a shorter zoom range, it could be super useful for certain applications.
Yeah, I think it's something I really am quite excited about exploring. And there is all sorts of things. If you're looking at the way image signal processing works and how that kind of handles different sensor sizes, there's definitely it's the opposite of economies of scale. It gets harder as they get bigger to make sure that actually looks right and works. So it's not only about the pixels; it's also the larger they are and the larger the sensor is, the optics start to come into that as well.
Yeah, I know that for us, I mean, for most of the shows that I work on, Super 35 is kind of our minimum. So we're always, looking for those Super 35 sensors, and we would, as Noah said, jump really quickly onto PTZs that had Super 35 sensors. Bigger than that is, it makes it harder to keep depth of field managed and so on and so forth. But for most of what we do, but I think that Super 35 is something that a lot of us are pretty interested in.
Well, that's
go ahead.
Very good feedback.
Yeah. There's nobody that's putting out a good PTZ at Super 35. And so all of us are just kind of circling around looking for a PTZ that does that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael with a question. In the audio control area for office hours space, and there's a link for it, the Flex 4K Out logo displayed on both screens. What could the Flex device be doing?
So in the audio control area, I'm not quite sure what we're exactly specifically talking about, but our BirdDog Flex output, that's an NDI decoder. So basically it will take any of our NDI sources and make that available as HDMI to then play that back out. So typically that's used as a box to decode. In terms of the specific use there in the audio control area, presumably that would be for confidence monitoring or for program output.
Next question.
And it's from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm glad to hear you mention firmware updates. I previously returned BirdDog products because of firmware that was lacking or didn't quite do what was promised. Is now the time for me to try BirdDog again?
All right. Well, that's look. I mean, I own that. Yes, there's been some growing along the way, and I think that's NDI as a whole. The fact that NDI is at now version 5, probably, if it was perfect at version 1, we wouldn't have that. So we've certainly done a whole bunch of improvements along the way. We embarked over a 9-month period last year in a feature of all of our products called LTS, which is long-term support. What we actually did was go back, and again, this kind of comes back to us looking after our existing customers and not just blazing a trail and leaving things behind, is we went back and redid from the ground up the firmware for all of our products in a unified manner. What happened was we started out making 1 product and 2 products, and we blinked and we had 22 of them. Each of them has individual code bases and individual firmware packages. So you can imagine as a bug was identified or a new version of NDI needed to be supported or things changed, it became a beast to wrangle. So this LTS was all about unifying that back. And so now all of our products have this singular firmware update. So if you have any of our cameras, it's now a single firmware update for all of the cameras. And so it allows us to be a whole lot more efficient in making sure that not only are the products the best features out there, but in terms of QA, in terms of actually building that firmware out to make sure it's fit for purpose, it gives us a whole lot more room to make sure that's done right. So hand on heart, absolutely, you should have a look at it again because the latest firmware really is pretty spectacular.
That's great. Next question.
John Preto from Las Vegas, Nevada. Dan, thank you for joining us today. Can you compare and contrast NDI versus SMPTE ST2110?
Sure. I think probably the best way to describe it is formats versus standards is probably one way to look at it. NDI is a format that's supported by a whole bunch of people. It's developed and licensed by NewTek and ultimately by VizRT. The benefits, I suppose, with NDI are its simplicity. It's designed to be easily deployed, and actually its scalability is pretty impressive as well. As far as onboarding with any of these formats, with NDI, if you have a small network environment, it lives up to its promise. It just works. You can install a couple of things on a network and you can get video happening straight away. The secret to that is the discovery service. It's just built into it, which means that any NDI device will advertise itself on the network and it's easy to find. So for smaller environments, it's just far more approachable, I think is the first thing. It's also typically more network friendly. If you're looking at NDI in terms of HD and 4K, you're in this higher end full NDI format, you're looking at 100 to 200 megabit sort of range. So you can easily fit that on regular gigabit networking and run other traffic on that network as well. Where you get to interesting sides of things on the SMPTE part is at the high end, you can use uncompressed. So for some people, that's important. And with that, absolutely, that's something NDI doesn't pretend to do. So if you're looking at using uncompressed for a direct replacement with SDI, then SMPTE is certainly something to look at there. Some other things which, again, all these formats are starting to converge because everyone, if you look at NDI, they'll be looking over at SMPTE and looking at the formats or the features that are really attractive there. And the same thing on the SMPTE side of things. So discovery is getting easier on the SMPTE side of things. Where SMPTE excels is timing, but now with NDI version 5, we've got that Genlock piece, which starts to bring in that timing. So they're actually starting to become a little bit more converged in terms of their approachability and their features. But probably I'd say on the NDI side of things, it really is the ability to scale easily. The fact that you've got a whole bunch of choices in terms of how you send things over a network, and probably the fact that you don't necessarily need to have quite so much training to be successful with it. So for smaller productions, it's pretty attractive.
Next question.
And it's from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina again. Is FreeD now available with all BirdDog PTZs?
It's now available in our beta group. So we've actually just released the second beta of it, which is likely to be the final one. So early next week, we're planning on making that public on our website. And that is for all of our cameras. We are advertising it as a experimental feature or a beta feature within this firmware update, and that's purely because we're still fine tuning the FreeD plugin. So the FreeD plugin for what's it called? Unreal Engine. Sorry, I had a moment there. The FreeD plugin for Unreal Engine, they're actually making some changes in terms of how Unreal handles NDI with Unreal Engine version 5. So there's a little bit of a cart before the horse in some ways. It's there and it works. So if you wanted to experiment with that, it's available publicly in final firmware as of early next week. If you're part of our beta group, you can download that today.
Next question.
Alex Olegnowitz from Toronto, Canada. Any chance the P4K camera will be supporting a baseband fiber card?
At this stage, we're not planning that. There is an option port on there. And so I guess the answer is probably, don't say never. But right now, that's not planned for using a baseband fiber adapter on there.
Next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina, really excited about the announcement of the Open Gear card, which can serve as a key price of the puzzle to bridge NDI into larger productions. Do you see more growth in this area for BirdDog?
Absolutely. So I think it's kind of interesting. All of our products, we've really tried to push out as far to the edge of the production as possible. So whether that's our cameras being right on the edge, right at a stage, or whether it's our decoders being either at the screen or even in the screen with our SDM modules. So to have our Open Gear kind of sits right in the middle. It's an infrastructure product, right? We see it really as a pretty interesting toolbox, and adding additional services to that is going to be pretty exciting. The fact that it's got 4 channels of SDI to NDI or the other way around. It's got all the dashboard, ROS dashboard controls built in, APIs for automation. It's kind of, it can be a really great get out of jail for a whole bunch of things. When you overlay that with some of the new announcements we got with Silicon 2, having those high efficiency and streaming formats, we then have this Open Gear card that can basically take a whole bunch of different things in or out, either over the internet, over IP to baseband, or back from baseband as well. So we certainly see that kind of infrastructure piece as a growing area within the product range.
Our next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California. How is BirdDog handling the latest codecs like H.266, AVI, etc.?
It's AV1.
Yeah, AV1, yeah. So I think, again, this is sort of a watch this space side of things. There's a level of what we can do and a level of where things will go. And no doubt, over time, AV1 is certainly showing a lot of promise in terms of where things might go. And we're really interested in watching how that might work. One of the cool things, and this is true for really any IP format, is you separate the transport from the essence. So if we've got the actual video essence, which at the moment is either going to be NDI, H.264 or H.265 for our products, And then you've got the transport, which is either NDI or it could be SRT and some of these other formats. As these other compression formats start to materialize a bit more, then we'll absolutely be looking at doing those. The challenge is really what we can squeeze out of current hardware. We're very much proponents of adding as much as we can to our existing products to continue to add value with customers. But then some of these things, like AV1, for example, is going to be pretty tricky to put into existing hardware. There's a whole bunch of processing that's needed there that, frankly, is not necessarily on tap at the moment.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is back. What underlying cloud platform, AWS, GCP, Azure, is BirdDog Cloud based on?
So BirdDog Cloud, we're hedging our bets a little bit with this because we actually have a great relationship with both AWS and Google Cloud Platform for different parts of cloud. So the orchestration side of things and our DX, which is our distribution service that allows you to not deal with firewalls, is all hosted with AWS. And then within Cloud Connect, which is our ability to send video out to any device, whether it's an Apple TV or a smart TV or an iPad, whatever it is, we actually partner up with Google for that in terms of doing all the distribution. We do allow people to bring their own or set up their own relay server there as well. So if you wanted to bring that all in-house to be entirely AWS, if you wanted to host that relay server in-house, if you wanted to, you can as well. But we partner up with GCP on that.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany. Where does the funny name come from?
Okay, so it's fundamentally so people don't forget it. I mentioned briefly my previous company that I set up with Eamon as well was Blonde Robot. That was pretty successful in a number of ways, but one of them is you say it once and people never forget it. So the next thing is it's pretty hard to name a company, right? You've got to get website URLs, Twitter handles, all these things, trademarks. So you've got to come up with something that's a bit different. But really what we ended up coming up with is, not that we are, but if you're a hunter, your bird dog is your faithful assistant. Like, if you shoot it, he'll go and get your prey and what you shot and bring it back. So we see bird dog as being your sidekick for a productionist, like your faithful assistant to get those productions done. So that's the story we made up. Probably the best thing about it is I came up with the name. Eamon wasn't sure until he came up with the logo, and I think we both fell in love with it then. The bird with the dog's head. So yeah.
That's great. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers from Madison, Wisconsin. In seeing the new P110, P120 cameras at NAB, I'm really liking the Mohawk Tally. Can they work with other tally systems and cameras with side tally lights?
So basically that Mohawk tally system, basically I don't have a camera in front of me here because I'm at home. It's in the wee hours here. But the Mohawk tally, basically it's a tally light that goes right over the top. So you can view the tally light anywhere in a 360 environment. In terms of tally control, you can actually control within our cameras the tally from a whole bunch of different ways. We've got API level, so you can send an HTML command and turn on and off the tally light. And that can be done with things like Companion or whatever you'd like. You can do that with the Visca commands, with NDI, or even Serial if you want to. So you can turn on and off and interact with those tally lights as much as you like in many different ways.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, have your software products, Comms Pro and the Dante NDI Bridge, been successfully virtualized on a VMware vSphere or other hypervisors infrastructure?
Some yes, and some we're still working on. So things like Dante, you need to be really careful when you're virtualizing that for timing and that kind of thing. So PTP and network timing can be an issue. So I'd probably exercise a little bit of caution with that. What we'd normally do with that is our BirdDog cloud platform. One thing I didn't mention is it also supports Dante as well. So we can send uncompressed audio from Dante over an SRT link up as many channels as you'd like, and then pop that out at the other end. So that can be done effectively to virtualize audio from one location to another. In terms of our comms platform, absolutely that can work. And in fact, a lot of things within NDI actually play really nicely virtualized. The one probably exception to that would be our multi-viewer platform, because that uses pretty heavily GPU acceleration. So we at this stage recommend running that on hardware.
Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California. You mentioned your partnership with Sony for sensors. Do you manufacture lenses in-house, or do you have another partnership as well with a lens maker?
So there's actually, as you sort of go through the range, it depends on the product. So effectively, all of our cameras use Sony sensors, and everything from our P200 product upwards actually is an entire Sony image module. So that's all of the glass and everything, all of the mechanics, all the zoom, all the autofocus. At the lower end, we actually do partner up and specifically make lenses for our products as well. And that's for the P100, P110, and P120.
That's great. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers on the panel and in Madison, Wisconsin. Is there a roadmap for 8K and beyond video that you can talk about?
Look, I think probably the best line I can draw with that, obviously everything advances along over time. So yeah, 8K is an inevitability at some point. What I'd point you towards is we have our quad hardware box, which can take 4 channels of 12G SDI and encode that into NDI at 60 frames a second. So if you've got that, effectively that is processing at 8K 60. So there's potential there for doing that. If you wanted to, it's just around how that gets encapsulated. So from a hardware point of view, that quad device is processing 8K at the moment, just as for individual streams.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Wurzburg, Germany. The P100 is the cheapest PTZ in the program, and he plans to approach a lower end.
That's an interesting question, because I think the P100 is a pretty attractive price. It's $14.95 from a retail price. And if you look at what that does in terms of the full NDI, it's got SDI as well as HDMI NDI. It's now got NDI HX and all these other streaming formats as well. So we think it's pretty keenly priced for the features it's got. But I do understand some people don't necessarily want all those bells and whistles. The challenge really is that we do actually do a lot of processing in hardware and with our FPGAs, which is the way we process NDI. What you find is as you go down lower, in fact, any camera that's even within that price range or certainly lower are using a system on a chip, which is basically an Android or an ARM processor that's got a hardware encoder that can save in H.264, and that's what they stream over. So what you get with that is actually limited amount of control over what you can do with the actual camera itself. Things like our color matrix and adjusting all of those things, those ISPs and those silicon chips don't really allow that. So there starts to be some pretty significant compromises as we go down. So at this stage, don't have any announcements. Of course, we are all about making products that are of value. So never say never, but at the moment, the P100 we think is pretty keenly priced for what it does.
Next question.
Joe Pashley from Phoenix, Arizona. Using the BirdDog Studio encoders, is there an easy solution to introduce a tally light into the viewfinder of a handheld camera?
I was just about to say yes, it's really easy, because actually with the Studio, it actually will do, with the loop out, it will do a tally border on there. So if you're receiving the NDI on a switcher, if you have a loop out going to a monitor that's on top of your camera, that loop out, you can turn on tally borders, so you can see whether you're on program or preview. In terms of getting a tally light on the actual viewfinder of a camera, so if you have a camcorder, that probably comes down to how that can be interacted between. We do have a tally port on there, which is a GPO, I should say, a general purpose output, which will give you a 5 volt plus when it goes tally green or tally blue or tally red. So you could potentially, depending on the camera you've got, convert that into something if the camera has an inbuilt tally system.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Can you describe how PTZ movements have improved over time, smoothing out jerky starts and stops, etc.? What has helped with this and is there still room for improvement? Absolutely.
So there's PTZs and there's PTZs. I think all PTZs look suspiciously like security cameras, right? They're that's kind of where they came from. And so with that, it's all about just moving fast and moving around. It's not about creating natural movements. And so we actually did quite a lot of work in actually designing the curve on how the cameras accelerate and slow down. So it doesn't just fire off with a jerk, because if you wanted to do any online type movements, then you want to have some sort of level of control over that and make it look somewhat natural. So a lot of that is to do with the motor control unit that you have and how you program that. And we spend a whole lot of time on the MCU or the motor control unit to make those moves as smooth as possible. The next step is the protocol itself. You can only interpret what you've got coming in as far as what the camera is being told how to move. And I mentioned slightly earlier, we've actually got some updates coming which take the granularity from 24 different speed adjustments to 250. And that's where you are going to see a lot more smooth movement, especially as if you're slowly moving up or trying to ramp up a speed, you're not going to see that kind of stepping from slow to slightly faster to super fast. It'll be a much more smooth movement from there. The actual chain along the way, the joystick that controls it's got a whole lot more fidelity than what the protocol has. And so that's what we're kind of breaking apart and sending a lot more of that through.
Next question.
Lenny Nelson from San Antonio, Texas. Looking at your core monitors, can they be battery powered? And tell Eamon I said hi.
Hey, Lenny, I think actually notionally you might be closer to Eamon than I am at the moment. He's actually over in Europe while I'm back here in Melbourne. The core monitors, it's another one of our announcements. They're on-camera monitors that are NDI, multiple channels of NDI encoding and decoding, as well as monitoring and waveforms and vectorscopes and all sorts of things. In terms of battery powered, they are designed typically to be PoE or powered over Ethernet. The nature of NDI is you typically are going to want to have a network connection to them. They do have a 12-volt power input as well. So you could use, if you set up a camera rig, you could then take a tap out from there and plug it in if you want to as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, which BirdDog product could be used as a low latency NDI encoder for esports applications where latency to the local monitor is crucial?
Look, embarrassingly, I think probably our cheapest product at the moment that's on sale is probably going to be the best one for that. It's our Flex encoder. Those guys are just super fast in the way they encode. And probably to extend out about that, the one thing that BirdDog does that's different to any other NDI encoder is as we get the video frame in, so if you're working at 1080p, for example, you've got 1080 lines. As we get 8 of those lines in, we're already compressing that into NDI. So by the time the frame's got to us in its entirety, it's ready to be sent across the network. We don't need to store that whole frame and then compress it. So the Flex enjoys that, as does every other product. But actually, I think the Flex is probably the right product for you for esports.
The next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California is back. Have you considered creating a PTZ with a teleprompter built into it?
That's a cool idea. But at this stage, no. But I do like it.
One of the big challenges that we have with teleprompters specifically is that number one is the PTZ. You put it into the teleprompter box, and now you have problems because it can't go very far. And then the other option is to hang the teleprompter on the front of the thing, which now it's a weight problem. And so both of those, there's a big challenge for those of us who are using it and need a teleprompter and a PTZ. It gets ugly, and so I think that's where that question comes from.
No, it is definitely a cool idea.
Yeah, he's right. Next question.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
I can watch later.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. The BirdDog Flex 4K Backpack Full NDI encoder is a life production saver. Any plans for a V-mount version?
Interesting question. So we have an E-mount that can go on. Is it E-mount? I think L series. Sorry, I should say. That can go on the back of an Atomos recorder. That's the Flex Backpack. But we don't actually have a V-mount version of that. It's something that is relatively straightforward to do. But again, these are the kind of things that are great feedback. So these kind of shows are awesome for me to get this kind of feedback. So
can you tell us what the backpack is? Just to kind of outline it for folks listening.
Sure, absolutely. So basically we have our Flex line of products. So they're our encoders or decoders. They're really small. They're there's about the size of a deck of cards, power over Ethernet. So you plug it in. It's got this cool thing, which we call a halo tally system on that, which means you can see it from all around. It lights up when you're on air or when you're in program. We've got 2 versions of the encoder of that product. There's the Flex In, and then there's the Flex Backpack. And the backpack is the same as a Flex In, but it's got a battery mount on there as well. So you can click that into the battery slot within an Atomos monitor or whatever other monitor you choose, and it'll actually power the monitor from there as well. So it'll take the PoE. It's got a supercharged version of our power over Ethernet. So it not only powers itself, but then we'll send the power out into the monitor as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, an ATEM was mentioned as an example of an SDI switcher one might want to interface NDI sources to. Do you think a BirdDog cloud switcher, all NDI, could be an ATEM killer if designed and positioned right?
I think keeping everything in a format makes a whole lot of sense. So if you're working in NDI, it makes a whole bunch of sense to keep that in NDI the whole way. If you're working in SDI, there's probably an argument to keep that way as well, because every time you do conversion, you're going to have extra boxes and things to manage. So I'm absolutely a proponent for NDI switches being really valuable and having more and more features. We're certainly moving towards cloud, and we think there's kind of 3 stages towards that. There's where we're at now, which is sending video over the internet, and notionally that's cloud. It can be done through AWS with things like SRT. Then there's that sort of more remote type production where we have things like our camera involvement and having more people involved in that production. But actually, as you go into full cloud hosting, I think that's where that's going to be a real game changer. So cloud first based switches and NDI based switches within there make a whole lot of sense.
Are you managing any comms through the NDI through the BirdDog cloud of being able to? How do you deal with that?
Yes, so we have BirdDog Comms as one of our applications. It's a relatively basic comm system. You can have different party lines, and you can have push to talk. You can talk to individuals and talk to groups and that kind of thing. But it's not really designed to be a full production comm system. It is built into all of our products. So any of our converters, any of our cameras, they can all live amongst this comm system, and that comms audio can actually go over our cloud platform as well. So you can absolutely have comms boxes or converter boxes with comms access anywhere you want.
So anywhere you have someone on let's say an iPhone, does it work like if someone's contributing with an iPhone?
No. So at this stage, it's kind of locked into our hardware. So any of our hardware devices, be it a camera or a converter, can work within that. Or equally, you could have the comms. It's an application that you run on a Windows machine that could be run remotely, and then all of your in-venue devices can be part of that comms group.
That's awesome. Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton. Is BirdDog publicly traded on any stock exchange?
Yes, Noah. We actually, we've been a little busy. So in the last 5 years, we've not only made dozens of products as well, but in December last year, we actually listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. So that was a pretty big moment for us. And it's pretty exciting, we think, for moving forward. It allows us to really double down our investment for building more products and building that out.
Is it a crazy experience to be publicly traded? Do you have to worry about it a lot? Or are you worried about what your quarterly reports are going to generate now?
Well, I think everyone's after the same result. So in some ways, you could argue, yes, there's a bit more requirements on the business in terms of reporting. We need to be active in front of our investors as much as our customers. So it takes up a little bit of time. But everyone wants the same outcome. We're all trying to make the business as successful as possible. So we've got nothing but support from our investor base as much as from our customers.
Do you find that it's harder to think long term when you're a publicly traded company versus when you're privately held?
I think that's a trick that you can get yourself into. For us, what we're really about is sort of telling that whole story of, we've come here with our products that we've made with NDI, and that's been, NDI's exploded. It's been a hugely successful format. That's kind of where we've got to. But then if you look forward, there's a whole lot more that's coming. So as we move to remote workflows into cloud and that kind of thing. So the future is very bright. So we're certainly not painting the picture that everything is about this quarter's earnings and that kind of thing. It is more, there's a whole lot more to run within this NDI space. And that's what we're focusing on. That's what we're building up with engineering. It's not just we haven't for a second listed the company to do that. It's all about making sure that we can actually get that roadmap that we would have taken 5 years to do. We want to bring that in 2 years and really bring out these crazy products. So.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Wurzburg, Germany. Do the PTZ cameras have an auto follow the talent function?
They do with our cam control software. We've got a great piece of software which is free that allows you to stack up to 4 of our cameras side by side. So if you're wanting to rack them, if you're wanting to paint them, you can see multiple cameras. And within that, each one of those cameras, you can turn on individually AI tracking as well. And we're really proud of it. It's free. It comes with any of our cameras. But the way that it actually moves is a really natural movement. And it's actually quite hard to trick it. So if once it's locked on a person, if you have another person enter the screen or walk in front or behind, it'll still keep tracking. So it's actually a pretty successful tracker and can be used for quite a lot of events. Probably wouldn't use it for a sporting game, but certainly great for presentations and that kind of thing.
Dan, thank you so much for your time. It was really an honor to have you here.
No problems at all. Glad to be here, and thanks for all the questions. So.
We really do grill you. I
hope I'm still making sense. It's 2 a.m. here, so
yeah. Well, thank you so much for staying up late for us and having just a great conversation. It really helps us understand what you guys are working on, and this has definitely been one of the best second hours we've had. So really appreciate your time.
Well, love it. And thank you guys. You do such a great job. Really enjoyed the first hour. I was watching it the whole time. So.
Thanks. And thanks to our producers for all the great questions. Just fantastic set of questions, both first and second hour. Thanks to the panel. Can't do this without you. And thank you to the host of folks in the back end that are making this all work every single day, 7 days a week. So just really great work. And now we're going to keep on going. We're going to end this part. We go into after hours and do this for another 21 hours. All right. We're jumping into after hours right now. Credits are coming up much faster. We're very happy about that. See, Dan, this is the part where we just kind of whisper. Mitchell loves this.
Okay, I'll whisper as well. Yeah, it's probably good because my kids are probably asleep.
See, now they can go to sleep because we're all whispering.
So many names. Takes a team.
Stop the madness.